internet because a lot of bad things are happening to young kids and young minds, and their minds are being formed.
Is there a link between virtual violence and the real thing?
They say that the connection between game violence and aggression is as strong as the medical association between cigarette smoking and lung cancer.
Has the state of California proved that violent video games present such a threat to 18-year-old kids and younger that it deserves a new regime of censorship in the United States?
I'm hearing more and more people say the level of violence on video games is really shaping young people's thoughts.
Well, a new study finds a link between violent games and aggressive behavior in children.
There is a clear, unequivocal link between violent video games, violent behavior. Their blood pressure goes up, their heart rate goes up, violent actions go up.
Simulated violence.
It's a criminal simulator, a murder simulator.
Markey's research shows 80% of mass shooters did not show an interest in violent video games.
Data is persistent and clear across many different forms. You cannot deny it. It is overwhelming.
Really? What is it called? Art of War, Man of War? What do the kids play?
Call of Duty.
We don't allow that in our house. Really? So busy buying Call of Duty. There needs to be more hugs in households.
I think that's what it really comes down to, is that, once again, the state is trying to supplant the role of parenting in determining what is and is not appropriate for their child.
Nothing in Call of Duty says you can't hug your family.
Girls aren't as into these video games.
You have to put a rating system for that, and you get into a whole very complicated, very big deal.
We see video games actually being used as a scapegoat for what I think might be the real causes of violence.
It's an integral part of our training. To make killing a conditioned response is part of modern training. We've got to do it.
What we're seeing here is what I've described as a chickens coming home to roost scenario.
Numerous scientific studies show there's no connection between video games and violence.
Where you saturate, you sell so recklessly so many of these weapons to so much of this high-risk demographic.
Why are you blaming artists for something that bad people did?
The data is so overwhelming, and
we're not talking about violence here. We're talking about aggressive thinking and aggressive attitude.
People must take responsibility. We must stop blaming society and actually blame the perpetrator.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, nobody buckled their seatbelt. We're all just fine. Not everybody with their seatbelt unbuckled died, but all.
That's not necessarily a link to violence, but that does tell us that the exposure, particularly for young kids, does have a negative effect in the way they think.
I think what it comes down to is this anxiety that surrounds the interactivity of video games, which is so much different than the passive way of enjoying other forms of entertainment, like movies, like music, like television, that seems to give, I think, an older generation a sense of anxiety that maybe there is some sort of correlation. You're going to act out, what's happening there on screen. Though really, once again, if you look at what's been happening with juvenile crime, it really doesn't seem to bear itself out.
They use these to train military.
They're teachers. They are not soldiers.
I'm not a medical expert.
Whether it's constitutional or not constitutional, maybe as a society we have to talk about what numbing ourselves to this very graphic violence. It's not like cartoon.
With what sounds like very precise descriptions of inappropriate content in those games, it is vague enough that it will be unclear to a retailer, to a game developer, to a game publisher what is or is not good.
Well, I'm glad I don't like these games.